There comes a time in life when choosing yourself becomes necessary, even if it upsets the people around you. We live in a world that often mistakes silence for weakness and distance for arrogance. But the truth is, sometimes distance is peace. Distance is growth. Distance is survival. Distance is a form of self-care. It's not about abandoning people or cutting ties out of spite. It's about preservation. It's about recognizing that your well-being has to come first, especially when you've spent too much of your life giving parts of yourself away to people who only took and never gave back. When you choose distance, you're saying, I matter too. You're making a quiet declaration that your peace is not something you're willing to sacrifice for the comfort of others anymore. There are moments in life when proximity becomes poisonous, when being too close to certain people drains you, manipulates you, or slowly breaks you down. And even though it's hard because many of these people are familiar, maybe even family or friends you've known for years, you start to understand that love alone isn't enough to justify staying in places where you're constantly shrinking. Distance becomes the boundary between who you are and who they want you to be, and it takes strength to step away, to say, I can't do this anymore, even when they don't understand. Some will say you're cold, that you've changed, that you've forgotten where you came from. But what they fail to see is that you've simply remembered who you are. You've remembered that self-care isn't just about spa days and journaling. It's also about hard decisions, quiet exits, and choosing your sanity over someone else's satisfaction. Distance is not bitterness. It's not revenge. It's healing in motion. It's the pause you take to breathe again, to listen to yourself after being drowned out by the noise of everyone else's needs. And while they may be mad, confused, or uncomfortable with the space you've created, that's no longer your burden to carry. Because self-care, at its core, is choosing yourself in the moments it would be easier to keep abandoning who you are just to keep the peace. Distance, when done with intention, is a sacred act of self-love. Not everyone deserves access to you. That's a lesson that doesn't come easy. It usually arrives after you've given too much of yourself to people who only showed up when it was convenient for them. After you've poured out your love, your energy, your loyalty, only to realize that it was never mutual. You begin to see how some people were never really in your corner. They were just standing close enough to benefit from your light, but never willing to protect it when it started to flicker. And the hard truth is, the more you grow, the more you understand that access to you is a privilege, not a right. Too often, we give people unlimited access out of guilt, history, or obligation. We let them in every time they knock, even when their presence causes chaos. We let them speak into our lives, influence our choices, drain our emotions, simply because we feel like we owe them something. But at what cost? Your peace, your energy, your sense of self. That kind of generosity becomes self-destructive when it's not reciprocated with care or respect. When you choose to limit access, when you start building boundaries, it doesn't mean you're being cruel or distant. It means you're finally valuing your worth. You're no longer giving people front row seats in your life just because they showed up once, or share your blood, or call themselves your friend. You're evaluating the role they've actually played and asking the real question, do they deserve to be this close to me? And if the answer is no, you act accordingly, not with malice, but with maturity. This kind of boundary setting shakes people, especially the ones who were never there for you in your lowest moments, but expected to be included in your rise. They don't understand that access to your heart, your mind, your time, it's earned, it's protected. It's not something you hand out to those who only come around when they need something, or when it benefits them. The moment you start protecting your space, some people will try to guilt you, shame you, or paint you as selfish. But what they're really upset about is losing the version of you who didn't yet realize your value. They're not mad about who you've become. They're mad that the old, more accessible version of you is gone. And that's the shift, understanding that not everyone deserves to know your thoughts, see your vulnerability, or stand next to your growth. Because when you finally see yourself clearly, you stop asking others to validate what you already know. You are enough. And not everyone should be allowed to touch that truth. Their anger reflects their dependency on your presence. It's not really about you being distant, it's about what your distance reveals. When you were always available, always answering the call, always showing up, even when it hurt, they became comfortable. They built a version of the relationship that only worked because you were the one holding it together. You were the one compromising, forgiving, overlooking, and giving chance after chance. So the moment you pulled back, the foundation started to crack, not because it was solid, but because it was built entirely on your effort. People who rely on your presence to feel important, stable, or in control will always take your absence personally. It forces them to confront the emptiness that your energy used to fill. It puts a mirror in front of them and shows them that maybe, just maybe, they were leaning on you more than they were standing on their own. That realization can be uncomfortable. So instead of taking accountability, instead of asking themselves why they feel so unbalanced without you, they get mad. They blame you. They say you changed, you switched up, you turned cold. But the truth is, you just stopped overextending yourself for people who wouldn't do the same for you. You become the villain in their story because it's easier than admitting they never gave you what you needed. They twist your boundaries into betrayal. They call your silence disrespectful. But it's not disrespectful to stop participating in one-sided relationships. It's not betrayal to choose peace over performance. And yet, to them, your distance feels like abandonment because they were never prepared to exist without your constant support. Your presence became a crutch for them, whether they admitted it or not. Maybe you were their source of validation, of comfort, of convenience. Maybe you made things easier for them, solved problems, softened blows. And when that was gone, they weren't just losing a person, they were losing the benefits of your emotional labor. That's why they're angry. That's why they're bitter. It's not because you did something wrong. It's because you stopped doing everything right for them. And as much as they want to make it about your distance, what they're really wrestling with is their own dependence on your time, your love, your effort. They've grown used to your emotional generosity, and when you took it back, they were left to figure out how to fill the void on their own. Their reaction is a reflection of that struggle. It's not your responsibility to fix. It never was. Not caring doesn't mean you're heartless. It means you've reached a place where your energy is no longer wasted on people, situations, or opinions that once consumed you. It means you've spent enough time carrying emotional baggage that wasn't yours, trying to prove yourself to people who only noticed your flaws, and constantly defending your choices to those who never lived your truth. Now you're done explaining, you're done justifying, and that lack of emotional reaction isn't coldness, it's clarity. You didn't just wake up one day and stop caring. It happened over time, after countless disappointments, after forgiving too quickly and giving too much. You kept showing up for people who never showed up for you. You kept hoping they'd understand your heart, appreciate your presence, or at least respect your boundaries. But they didn't. They only noticed how much they could take from you before you broke. And when you finally did break, when you finally pulled back and started protecting your peace, they called you detached, distant, or selfish. But that's not the truth. The truth is, you finally realized that caring too much about the wrong people is a slow kind of self-destruction. So now, when the chaos comes knocking, when the drama stirs, when the guilt trips begin, you don't flinch. You don't jump to defend yourself or rush to fix what was never yours to fix in the first place. That quiet detachment, that stillness they mistake for apathy, is actually strength. You're no longer reactive because you've found peace within yourself. You've stopped trying to be understood by people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You've accepted that not everyone gets access to your heart, your time, or your vulnerability, and that decision was never about being heartless. It was about being honest with yourself. You've learned that caring isn't always healthy when it comes at the expense of your own well-being. There's a difference between being kind and being a doormat. There's a difference between being empathetic and being emotionally manipulated. And there's a difference between being available and being used. When you stopped caring about pleasing everyone, you started honoring yourself. When you stopped engaging in battles that didn't serve your growth, you made space for real healing. And when they call that heartless, let them, because your peace isn't up for their interpretation. You didn't lose your heart, you just stopped giving it to people who didn't know what to do with it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Growth often requires separation. It's one of the hardest truths to accept, because the journey of becoming who you're meant to be rarely happens in the same spaces where you once felt safe, familiar, or comfortable. Sometimes, in order to evolve, you have to let go of the people, habits, and environments that kept you grounded in a version of yourself that no longer exists. And that kind of separation doesn't always come with closure, applause, or understanding. Often it comes with silence, resistance, and judgment from others and even from yourself. You start to realize that not everyone is meant to go where you're headed. The people you laughed with, cried with, survived things with, they were right for that chapter. But growth, real growth, requires new energy. It requires solitude, reflection, and uncomfortable honesty. You begin to see how certain conversations, certain circles, even certain mindsets no longer fit. Not because you're better than anyone, but because you're becoming better than you were. And not everyone is ready to accept that version of you. Some would rather keep you in a place that makes them feel secure, superior, or needed. And when you rise, they feel left behind. So they question you, they guilt you, they say you've changed, as if change isn't the entire point of life. There's grief in separation. That's the part people don't talk about enough. It hurts to walk away from someone you once loved deeply. It's painful to step out of the roles you played for so long. Maybe you were the peacemaker, the fixer, the strong one. Maybe you built your identity around being needed. But when growth calls, you have to ask yourself if being needed is worth being drained, if being included is worth being silenced, if being loyal is worth being stuck. And when the answer is no, you leave. Even if it's quiet, even if no one claps for you, even if they don't understand. Separation creates space for new thoughts, healthier relationships, deeper self-awareness. In the silence, you hear your own voice more clearly. You stop performing and start being. You begin to attract people who see you for who you are now, not who you used to be. And yes, it's lonely sometimes. Yes, you might miss the comfort of old connections, but you'll never miss the confusion, the chaos, or the way you had to shrink just to be accepted. Growth isn't always graceful. It's messy, it's isolating, but it's necessary. You cannot become who you're meant to be if you're constantly holding on to who you were. And sometimes that means walking away. Not because you stopped loving them, but because you started loving yourself. Choosing yourself will offend people who benefited from your self-neglect. It's a quiet revolution. The moment you finally say, I come first, and mean it. And not in a selfish, careless way, but in a deeply necessary, soul-preserving way. You realize that for far too long, you've bent over backwards to be enough for people who didn't know how to appreciate you, let alone reciprocate. You showed up when you were exhausted. You said yes when you wanted to say no. You made space in your life for people who never made room for you in theirs. And all the while, you told yourself this was loyalty, this was love, this was just what good people do. But then comes a moment, a breaking point, or maybe a slow awakening, when you begin to recognize the pattern. You begin to feel the weight of everything you've carried that wasn't yours. You start to hear your own voice through the noise of everyone else's needs. And for the first time, you give yourself permission to matter, not just in theory, but in practice. You start making decisions based on your peace, your goals, your healing. And suddenly, the people who once praised your selflessness begin to criticize your independence. Because here's the truth. Some people only loved you when you were convenient, when your yes served them, when your availability kept their world intact. They called you amazing, selfless, dependable, until your boundaries made you unavailable, until you stopped putting them before yourself. Then the narrative shifted. Suddenly, you're difficult, you're distant, you're not who you used to be. But that's the point, you're not. You've grown, you've outgrown. It's not that you stopped loving them. It's not that you became cold. It's that you finally realized love isn't meant to be one-sided. That real relationships don't require you to lose yourself to keep someone else happy. And the people who benefited from your lack of boundaries will always be the loudest when you start building them. They'll call your healing a betrayal. they'll call your boundaries disrespectful. But what they're really saying is, I don't like this version of you that I can't control. Choosing yourself will offend people who expected your sacrifice. It will threaten the dynamics that were built on your silence. But you weren't put here to be drained. You weren't created to be everyone's emotional punching bag, their safety net, their endless supply of grace. You are allowed to evolve, to protect your peace, to say, I love you, but I need space, or even I love me more right now. You're not wrong for choosing yourself. You're just finally choosing not to abandon yourself for the sake of being accepted. And if that offends them, let it, because your healing, your growth, your boundaries, they are not up for negotiation. When you stop showing up for everyone else but yourself, you start to see the depth of your own sacrifice. It's a quiet kind of burnout that creeps up on you. One moment, you're giving all your energy, your time, your empathy, and the next, you realize you've given so much that you don't have anything left for yourself. You've been present for everyone's highs and lows, supporting their dreams and comforting their fears. But when it comes to your own dreams and your own needs, there's always an excuse, always a delay. That's how you end up lost in other people's narratives, playing a role in their lives, while your own life sits in the background, gathering dust. Stopping this cycle is one of the hardest decisions you'll make, because it feels like you're letting go of people, relationships, or identities that have defined you for so long. You might feel guilty, you might feel selfish, you might feel like you're turning your back on people who depend on you. But when you stop showing up for everyone else, you start showing up for yourself. You start realizing that you've been putting your own needs on the back burner for too long, and the person who suffers most is you. You start to remember who you were before everyone else's problems became your own, before you were weighed down by responsibilities that weren't meant for you to carry. It doesn't mean you stop caring about others, but it means you've learned that your own well-being matters just as much. For so long, you've been conditioned to believe that being there for others means sacrificing your peace, your time, and your happiness. But what you realize when you start putting yourself first is that it's not a sacrifice, it's a necessity. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't build a life for others while destroying your own. When you show up for yourself, you're not being selfish, you're being self-aware. You also begin to see the truth behind the relationships that once seemed so important. People who didn't respect your boundaries when you were always available start to resent you when you're no longer at their disposal. They get angry because they're used to your constant presence, your endless support, your willingness to give without question. But when you start putting your own needs ahead of theirs, they're forced to confront a truth they'd rather ignore, that they've been taking more than they've been giving. And that discomfort they feel isn't your problem, it's theirs. You are not responsible for how people react to you, choosing yourself. This doesn't mean you stop caring about their well-being or turn your back on them. It means you stop living in a way that prioritizes their happiness over your own. You stop being the person who is always ready to sacrifice your plans, your time, your dreams, and your peace just to make them feel comfortable. And in doing so, you start to feel a sense of freedom. It's like you've been holding your breath for so long, trying to please everyone, and finally you exhale. You begin to breathe again. You begin to live again. Your life becomes yours again. And in this process, you also learn that showing up for yourself doesn't mean being alone or disconnected from those you love. It means you are giving yourself the chance to be whole, so you can show up as your best self, not as someone who is burnt out, resentful, or depleted. When you stop showing up for everyone else, you start to show up for the most important relationship you'll ever have, the one you have with yourself. And in doing so, you create healthier boundaries, healthier relationships, and a healthier life overall. You'll also come to realize that some people won't understand this shift. They'll be confused, frustrated, maybe even angry, because they've grown used to you being there, always available, always dependable. But when you begin to show up for yourself, they'll see it as abandonment, as rejection. What they fail to understand is that you're not abandoning them. You're just no longer abandoning yourself. They'll try to guilt you, try to manipulate you into coming back to the role you once played. but that's not your responsibility anymore. Your responsibility is to yourself. And when you stop showing up for others at the expense of your own happiness, you begin to see who truly respects you, who truly cares for you, and who is only interested in what you can provide for them. In the end, you'll realize that the most important person you can be there for is yourself. When you show up for yourself, you unlock the ability to give others the best of you, not the drained, tired version of yourself who has nothing left to give. You'll begin to understand that in order to truly love others, you must first love yourself, and loving yourself means honoring your own needs, your own boundaries, and your own peace. There is a quiet strength in choosing to distance yourself, not out of anger, but out of necessity. When you've given so much of yourself for so long, and the return is either non-existent or unappreciative, you reach a point where enough is enough. The distance you create isn't a reflection of hate or abandonment. It's a reflection of self-preservation. It's the moment you choose to protect your mental and emotional health above everything else. People may not understand this at first, because they've grown accustomed to your presence, to your willingness to accommodate their needs, to your relentless effort to keep everything and everyone afloat. But when you finally pull back, when you stop being the one who bends to every demand and shows up at every beck and call, they're left feeling confused, even betrayed. They don't understand that your silence isn't rejection, it's reflection. For so long, you've been the caretaker, the listener, the one who offers solutions, the person who is constantly there to pick up the pieces. You may have believed that being available for others in their time of need was a virtue, that it was a demonstration of love, of loyalty. But you start to see that in doing so, you were neglecting your own needs, your own desires, and your own sense of worth. The more you gave, the more people came to expect it, and over time the balance shifted. What was once a voluntary act of love and care became an obligation, something you did because you felt you had no other choice. And that's where the distance comes in. When you choose to create that space, you're not being cruel. You're simply recognizing that you can't pour from an empty cup. When you begin to distance yourself from those who have become accustomed to your constant availability, it forces them to confront a truth they've been unwilling to see, that your energy, your time, your love was never an unlimited resource. You have been carrying burdens that were not yours to carry, and you've been doing so out of a misguided sense of duty. But now, as you create boundaries and pull away, they may feel abandoned, upset, or angry because they've taken your presence for granted. They might believe that you've changed for the worse, that you've stopped caring, that you've somehow betrayed them. But what they fail to see is that this isn't about them. It's about you. It's about your decision to stop being the person who constantly sacrifices their peace for the sake of others. This decision to distance yourself is not easy, because it means you have to confront your own fears. You fear rejection. You fear that people will no longer love you if you stop giving them everything. You fear the awkwardness, the guilt, the judgment that might follow. But over time, you begin to realize that true love and true loyalty don't come from endless self-sacrifice. They come from mutual respect, understanding, and healthy boundaries. As you distance yourself, you start to see more clearly who is truly there for you, who respects your space, and who is only interested in what you can provide for them. And while it may feel lonely at first, this new sense of clarity is liberating. It's the clarity you need to understand who truly values you for who you are, not just what you can give. It's important to understand that this space you're creating is not a punishment for those around you. It's a form of healing for yourself. You may have spent years giving parts of yourself away, trying to fix what wasn't broken, trying to smooth over every conflict, trying to make everyone else feel comfortable at the expense of your own well-being. And over time, that takes a toll. You start to lose sight of who you are, of what makes you happy, of what you need in order to feel fulfilled. This distance then becomes a form of reclaiming what was always yours. It's a way to return to yourself, to remember your own desires, your own dreams, your own worth. As you create more distance, you'll notice that not everyone will be willing to accept the new boundaries you've set. Some people will try to push against them, to guilt you, to remind you of how much they need you. They may try to make you feel like you're being unreasonable or selfish. But what they fail to understand is that by respecting your boundaries, they are actually respecting you more than they ever did when they took your time and your energy for granted. They will only see your absence as a loss because they haven't learned to appreciate your presence for the right reasons. When you choose distance, it's not about walking away from love or friendship. It's about making sure that the love and friendship you give are rooted in mutual respect, not in one-sided sacrifice. In time, you'll realize that the distance isn't just for you, it's also for them. It gives them the opportunity to grow, to learn how to function without your constant support, and to recognize the value of what they once had. They'll have to learn how to stand on their own, how to solve their problems without you always coming to the rescue. And while this might be uncomfortable for them, it's ultimately for their own growth as well. Sometimes, people need to experience the absence of something in order to truly appreciate its value. Your distance is the wake-up call. They may need to understand that relationships require balance, that love is not about dependency, but about healthy interdependence. And as you continue to create space for yourself, you'll notice that the people who truly belong in your life will begin to show up in ways that are meaningful and genuine. They'll respect your boundaries, they'll appreciate your presence, and they'll understand that love doesn't require constant sacrifice. The distance you've created will allow for deeper, more authentic connections to emerge. Those who value you for who you are, not for what you give, will find their way back to you in a healthier, more balanced way. The distance, in the end, becomes a catalyst for more fulfilling, reciprocal relationships, relationships that are built on mutual respect, understanding, and love. Ultimately, the decision to create distance is an act of love, first for yourself, and then for those around you. It is a reminder that your well-being, your peace, and your happiness matter just as much as anyone else's. And as you begin to respect and honor your own boundaries, you'll find that others will learn to do the same. The distance will no longer feel like a loss. It will feel like the space needed for true connection, growth, and healing. Choosing to step back and create distance from those who demand too much of your energy is often perceived as a selfish act by others, but in reality, it is an act of self-care that is deeply necessary for your own well-being. For far too long, you have given pieces of yourself away to others, trying to fill needs and patch up spaces where your presence was required. It might have started with the intention to help, to be there for others, but over time, it turned into an unhealthy habit of neglecting your own needs in favor of constantly trying to meet theirs. You've been running on empty for so long that you've lost sight of who you are, what you want, and what truly makes you happy. The moment you realize this, you're faced with the difficult truth. You can no longer afford to give more of yourself than you have to give. And so, you make the hard decision to stop showing up for everyone else, not out of malice, but because you have to start showing up for yourself. This decision, although necessary, is not an easy one. People who have grown accustomed to your availability, your constant presence, and your unyielding support will not understand your sudden withdrawal. They may feel as though you've abandoned them, that you've turned your back on them, or that you've become cold or indifferent. They might even accuse you of not caring anymore, or of being selfish. But the truth is that your decision to create distance isn't about rejecting them. It's about saving yourself from the constant emotional exhaustion that comes from overextending yourself. You've realized that in order to continue being there for others, you first have to take care of yourself. You need space to breathe, to think, to rest, and to reconnect with the parts of yourself that have been buried under the weight of others' expectation. The reality is, when you've been the person others depend on for so long, they often fail to notice how much of you they are consuming. They don't realize how much you've sacrificed until you pull away. They don't see the emotional toll it takes to always be the one who listens, the one who solves problems, the one who makes things better. They've come to expect your presence as a given, without recognizing the toll it has on you. And when you finally stop showing up as they expect, they react with confusion and frustration. But what they fail to realize is that you are not obligated to give endlessly, and you don't owe them pieces of yourself just to keep them comfortable. When you begin to distance yourself, you are not denying them love or care. You are simply acknowledging that you need to preserve your own energy, your own mental health, and your own emotional space. As you begin to take steps back, you may experience guilt. You may second-guess your decision, wondering if you've done the right thing. After all, for so long, your identity has been tied to the role you played for others, whether that role was the reliable friend, the problem solver, the caretaker, or the emotional anchor. Walking away from that feels like you're abandoning a part of yourself. But the truth is, you are not abandoning anyone. You are merely re-establishing balance. You are reminding yourself that your worth is not defined by how much you give or how much others need from you. Your worth exists independent of others' expectations, and by choosing to distance yourself, you are finally giving yourself the space to recognize that. The guilt you feel is a reflection of the years spent teaching yourself that your value lies in your availability to others. But now, you begin to understand that your value lies in your ability to honor your own needs, to prioritize your own growth, and to set boundaries that protect your peace. The moment you start putting yourself first, you will begin to notice that you have more to give to those who truly deserve your time and energy, the ones who respect your boundaries and appreciate you without taking advantage of your generosity. The relationships that are meant to last will grow stronger through this distance, because they will be based on mutual respect, healthy communication, and understanding. Over time, as you create more space for yourself, you will begin to rediscover parts of yourself that had long been forgotten. The dreams, the desires, the passions that you had pushed aside in order to focus on everyone else will resurface. You will start to remember what it feels like to live for yourself, to take pleasure in your own company, and to pursue your own goals without feeling guilty for doing so. The freedom you find in distancing yourself from the expectations of others will allow you to reconnect with your true self, the person you were before you became entangled in the needs and demands of those around you. This newfound freedom doesn't mean that you stop caring about the people in your life, but it does mean that you stop allowing their needs to take precedence over your own. It means you learn how to say no without feeling like you're letting people down. It means you stop sacrificing your happiness and your peace for the sake of others' comfort. In time, you will realize that by setting these boundaries, you are not only improving your own life, but you are also teaching others how to respect you and your needs. You are showing them that love and care should be mutual, not one-sided. You are demonstrating that your well-being matters, and that you are worthy of the same care and consideration that you've so freely given to others. The people who truly value you will learn to appreciate this new version of you, the one who takes time for herself, who sets boundaries, and who refuses to be drained by people who don't understand the importance of reciprocity. They will understand that your love for them hasn't changed. You've simply changed the way you give it. And for the ones who are unwilling to respect your boundaries, the distance will serve as a way of letting go of relationships that were never truly healthy for you. It may be painful at first, but in the long run, it will be a liberating act of self-preservation. As you continue to distance yourself, you will realize that the guilt you once felt begins to fade. The more you prioritize yourself, the more you understand that your happiness and your well-being are not negotiable. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself through constant availability. Instead, you learn to live authentically, embracing the person you are becoming, without needing validation from anyone else. This journey is one of self-discovery, of realizing that you don't have to give everything to everyone to be loved or appreciated. You are enough as you are, and by honoring your own needs, you are setting the foundation for healthier, more fulfilling relationships in the future. Ultimately, the distance you create is not a punishment or a sign of weakness. It is a reclaiming of your own power. It is the act of choosing yourself, of recognizing your own worth, and of prioritizing your own needs over the endless demands of others. Through this process, you will not only heal and grow, but also begin to attract the people who truly see you, value you, and respect you for who you are, not for what you can give. And in that space, you will find the peace and fulfillment you've been seeking all along.